Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one.
An African-American man stands during a Ku Klux Klan rally in Jackson, Mississippi in 1950. Amid a period of intense racial segregation in the United States, this image symbolizes courage in the face of hostility. This photo was taken in May 1945, when two survivors are cooking outside the Dachau concentration camp in Germany, shortly after the camp was liberated by Allied forces. John F. Kennedy Jr. salutes during the funeral of his father, President John F. Kennedy, in Washington, United States, on November 25, 1963. Passengers in New York read newspapers inside the train on the evening of November 22, 1963, hours after the news of President John F. Kennedy's passing. The headlines featured the tragedy that shook the nation, which occurred in Dallas, Texas. During the Dutch famine between 1944 and 1945, many children carried spoons, hoping for any food offering. Known as the Hunger Winter, this period was caused by the food blockade imposed by German forces in the western part of the country. A French woman having her head shaved by civilians in 1944 as punishment for collaborating with the Nazis during the German occupation of France in World War II. Japanese soldiers bathing during the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. The conflict occurred between the Russian Empire and the Japanese Empire, primarily in Manchuria and Korea, and was a struggle for control of territories in Asia. People walking in the New York subway in the 1980s, when the system was considered the most dangerous in the world. This photo was taken in September 1941 during the Soviet occupation of Ukraine, in the context of World War II. It shows a Cossack policeman using a sword against a captured Soviet partisan, with Hungarian soldiers observing the scene. Elton John during a performance in the 1970s, where he wore an extravagant and colorful outfit, a style for which he became famous. Costume test of a flying monkey backstage during the movie The Wizard of Oz in 1939. These characters appeared as servants of the Wicked Witch of the West and marked generations with their frightening appearance. A group of soldiers sits together in a trench during World War I in 1914. Trenches were dug along the front lines and served as shelter from enemy fire. Workers open a glowing crucible at the steel mills in the Meuse Valley, Belgium, in the early 20th century. The region was one of the most important industrial centers in Europe, particularly known for steel production. Two Armenian women with rifles prepare to fight against Ottoman forces in 1895. During this period, Armenian communities faced persecutions and attacks in various regions of the Ottoman Empire. Nestori Lindström, an 11-year-old Finnish boy, fled his home during the Continuation War because he wanted to help on the Northern Front against the Soviets. Children played jump rope with the help of a U.S. soldier on a residential street in England in 1944. United States soldiers during World War II, preparing what they called Easter eggs for Hitler in Europe. A street vendor in Egypt displays mummies and ancient artifacts in 1865. At that time, the trade of mummies was common, driven by European interest in Egyptian antiquities. At the age of 10, George Davey was sentenced to 1 month of forced labor at Wandsworth Prison in London, England, in 1872. He had been accused of stealing 2 rabbits. California hunter and trapper Seth Kinman poses seated in a chair made from the skin and bones of a grizzly bear. The piece was gifted to President Andrew Johnson in 1865. This was the exact moment when Germany declared war on the United States on December 11, 1941. The declaration was made at the Reichstag in Berlin, just days after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This photo was taken in 1869, showing the last surviving veterans of the Third Siege of Tarragona, which occurred in 1809 during the Peninsular War. A woman walks across the frozen Mississippi River in St. Louis, Missouri, in 1905. In the background is the Eads Bridge, one of the first major steel bridges in the world, opened in 1874. Mr. Larkin cleans the dial of the famous clock known as Big Ben in London, using only a rope to hold on. A crowd of people waits at an employment office counter during the Great Depression in the 1930s. The Great Depression period was marked by a severe global economic crisis, which led millions of people to lose their jobs, homes, and sources of livelihood. This photo was taken in 1963 in New York, showing Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali together. At the time, Ali was still known as Cassius Clay and was at the beginning of his boxing career. Sophia Loren during the Cannes Film Festival, held between April 26th and May 10th, 1955 in France. Already recognized for her talent and beauty, the Italian actress attracted attention on the French Riviera. A young man writes news about the Titanic disaster on a bulletin board in Times Square, New York, in 1912. The ship had sunk in the early morning of April 15th during its maiden voyage, after hitting an iceberg in the Atlantic Ocean. The Columbia spacecraft prepares for the first space shuttle launch, STS-1, on April 12, 1981. This launch marked a historic moment in space exploration, being the first flight of a NASA space shuttle, with pilot John Young and Commander Robert Crippen on the mission. The President of the United States, Richard Milhous Nixon, arrives aboard the USS Hornet for the recovery of the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. The Church of God with signs following, photographed in the 1960s. Members of this church believe that, as described in Mark 16:17-18, they would be protected when handling venomous snakes and drinking poison. Children play in the streets of Berlin in 1927 during the Weimar Republic period in Germany. Despite the economic hardships following World War I, the late 1920s brought moments of relative stability and cultural growth. During racial segregation in the United States, public water fountains were divided between whites and blacks as part of the Jim Crow laws. The drinking fountain in the image was designated exclusively for whites, reflecting the legalized discrimination of the time. Racial segregation in North Carolina in 1950, a time when racial segregation laws, known as Jim Crow laws, were still in effect in the United States. Mao Zedong's last public appearance recorded on May 27, 1976, just months before his death. Leader of the Chinese Revolution and founder of the People's Republic of China in 1949, Mao remained in power for nearly 3 decades. Thérèse de Lisieux, dressed as Joan of Arc in 1897, This is the only known photograph of a canonized saint representing another saint. This photo was taken in 1955 on the day of Disneyland's opening in Anaheim, California. The park, conceived by Walt Disney, opened its doors to the public on July 17th of that year and quickly became an icon of American culture. A Soviet-style military parade held for the 5th anniversary of the Sour Revolution of 1978 on the streets of Kabul in 1983. The Sour Revolution, which occurred in 1978, brought the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan to power. The United States Air Force tested zero gravity on a cat in 1958 after taking the F-94C Starfire to an altitude of 25,000 feet and performing a dive maneuver. Children cross a river using pulleys on their way to school in the outskirts of Modena, Italy in 1959. During this time, many rural areas of Italy lacked modern transportation infrastructure, and improvised solutions like rope bridges or pulleys were common for crossing rivers and other natural obstacles. Bicycle of the Future, introduced in 1946. The model featured an aerodynamic design with curved bodywork inspired by the post-war futuristic style. Japanese Seiko watch with a television function, launched in 1982. This innovative model featured a small screen on the wrist and was connected to a portable receiver through wires. Vintage telephone table with integrated seat, popular in the 1950s and 1960s. This compact piece of furniture was common in homes, serving as a specific place to make and receive calls before the mobile phone era. Italian grocery store in New York, photographed in 1943. The store displays shelves filled with preserves and cheeses, as well as sausages hanging from the ceiling, typical of Italian cuisine. Men talk animatedly next to a new car in South Richmond, Virginia, in 1938. During this period, owning a car was a major symbol of achievement and progress for many families in the United States. A young woman in the 1920s, known as a flapper, gets a tattoo on her thigh. Flappers represented a generation of women who defied social norms with bold clothing, short haircuts, and modern attitudes. The 1 millionth 1965 Pontiac Bonneville convertible produced by General Motors was manufactured at the Arlington, Texas plant. The Bonneville model was one of the most luxurious cars in the Pontiac lineup, known for its size, power, and refined finish. The White Tower of Thessaloniki in Greece, photographed in 1920. During the period of Ottoman rule, the site was used as a prison, known for reports of severe punishments. A roller coaster at the Mars Field in St. Petersburg, photographed in 1895. These attractions were popular in Imperial Russia and were considered precursors to modern amusement parks. This photo was taken in 1971 when Starbucks was founded in Seattle, Washington. The company started as a small store specializing in coffee beans and equipment for making beverages. This photo shows the first headquarters of Samsung, founded in 1938 in Suwon, South Korea. Originally, the company was a small store exporting food products and goods. Curious scene on Mangin Street, New York City in 1946. A horse and a man observed the street through a window of a residential building. At that time, horse-drawn carts were still used for transporting goods, even after motorized vehicles became popular. Staircase designed by Leonardo da Vinci in 1516, located at the Château de Chambord in France. The structure has a double spiral design, allowing two people to go up and down at the same time without crossing paths. And the Stray Dog Lady in England in 1962. Despite limited resources, she dedicated her life to caring for abandoned dogs. Over the years, she took in and cared for more than 600 animals. The oldest known photograph of a journalistic event shows a man being arrested in France in 1847. Captured by a daguerreotype, the image marks the beginning of the use of photography to document real events. The Monteleone war chariot, found in Italy, is a rare example of Etruscan art and dates back to the 6th century BC. Made of bronze, iron, and ivory, the chariot depicts scenes from the hero Achilles in Greek mythology. This photo shows Sister Mary Kenneth Keller in 1965, when she became the first woman in the United States to earn a PhD in computer science. Between the 1940s and 1970s, pinball machines were banned in several major U.S. cities, such as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. The ban was motivated by concerns over gambling, as many viewed pinball as a form of betting. Photographer and model Bunny Yeager takes a self-portrait in the 1950s. Known for popularizing the photography of women in bold poses, Yeager also pioneered being both behind and in front of the camera. The land auction that took place in 1909, when Tel Aviv was established on land purchased from Bedouins north of Jaffa in the region of Palestine, which was then under Ottoman rule. A man riding an elk on his way to town, photographed in 1910. During this time, elk and other wild animals were frequently found in more remote areas, far from the big cities. A mule-drawn mail carriage in the United States, transporting passengers in Texas around 1907. At that time, the Postal Service was essential for communication and the transport of goods in the country's more remote areas. A large cactus in Baja California, photographed in 1895. The Baja California region in Mexico is known for its arid landscape and the presence of various species of imposing cacti, such as the saguaro. A young Native American woman from the Kiowa tribe, photographed in Oklahoma in 1894. The Kiowa were known for their rich culture, including art, music, and spiritual rituals, as well as their skills as hunters and warriors. The Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan offers one of the most iconic images of New York. The bridge, completed in 1883, connects the neighborhoods of Manhattan and Brooklyn, crossing the East River. The 1946 Ford models being loaded for delivery. After World War II, the American automobile industry began to ramp up production, and the 1946 cars marked Ford's return to mass manufacturing. S&H green stamps were a popular rewards program in the United States between the 1930s and 1970s. Customers earned stamps in participating stores based on the value of their purchases. The Edmonton ice hockey team in 1916. At that time, the swastika was a common symbol in various cultures and did not have the connotation associated with Nazism that it acquired after being adopted by Adolf Hitler. The 1963 bubble car, also known as a microcar, was a compact and economical car model that gained popularity in Europe during the 1960s. The Neue Elbbrücke Bridge in Hamburg, Germany, was inaugurated in 1887 and remained in use until 1959. The original structure was famous for its imposing Gothic towers, which became a symbol of the city. A girl who grew up in a concentration camp, drawing an image of home while living in a residence for disturbed children in Poland in 1948. A crowd of people waits at an employment office counter during the Great Depression in the 1930s. The Great Depression period was marked by a severe global economic crisis, which led millions of people to lose their jobs, homes, and sources of livelihood. This photo, titled "Wait for Me, Daddy," was taken by Claude P. Detloff in New Westminster, Canada, on October 1, 1940. Edward Evans observing a Jupiter occultation during the Terra Nova expedition in Antarctica in June 1911. The expedition, led by Robert Falcon Scott, aimed to explore the polar region and conduct a series of scientific experiments. The bow section of the supertanker Amoco Cadiz, after it broke apart, spilling 220,000 tons of oil off the coast of France in March 1978. This was one of the worst ecological disasters of the 1970s. People walking in the New York subway in the 1980s, when the system was considered the most dangerous in the world. Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, posing in his characteristic manner. A Tizen Caesar Keto cinema etiquette poster. During this time, cinema was becoming a popular form of entertainment, and etiquette rules were important to ensure a pleasant experience for all viewers. The Columbia spacecraft prepares for the first space shuttle launch, STS-1, on April 12, 1981. This launch marked a historic moment in space exploration, being the first flight of a NASA space shuttle, with pilot John Young and Commander Robert Crippen on the mission. The United States invasion of Grenada in 1983, a military operation called Operation Urgent Fury. The invasion was launched by the United States to overthrow Grenada's Marxist-Leninist government. A friend helps his amputee friend, injured in the war, in Naples, Italy, in 1944. The image was captured by Henri Cartier-Bresson, one of the most renowned photographers of the 20th century. A young woman with a wild expression and a suit, holding a chicken, photographed around the 1900s. The image reflects a time when rural life was more common and people often interacted directly with animals. Times Square in New York during the 1920s was a bustling center of culture and commerce, symbolizing the vibrant energy of the city during the interwar period. West 23rd Street in New York, around 1905, was a busy and iconic area of the city, reflecting the growing urbanization and modernization of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. Queen Mary, grandmother of the current Queen Elizabeth II, holds young Elizabeth in 1926. This moment reflects a time of transition in the British royal family, with Elizabeth still a child and her grandmother, Queen Mary, being a central figure in the monarchy. The Buku hamburger stand in Harlingen, Texas, was a popular spot at the time, offering hamburgers for 5 cents, chili for 10 cents, and breakfast for just 25 cents. This photo shows the original McDonald's menu from a time when prices were much lower. The menu features items like the Big Mac for 49 cents, hamburgers for 39 cents, and milkshakes starting at 25 cents. This photo was taken in 1973 in East Berlin during the Cold War. At the time, Berlin was divided into two parts: West Berlin, under the influence of the Allies, and East Berlin, under Soviet control.
If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.